What if the most powerful voice you will ever hear is the one that says nothing at all? Imagine that the answers to your deepest questions about purpose, peace, connection, and truth are not hidden in loud speeches, trending ideas, or endless notifications, but waiting quietly in silence. This idea feels uncomfortable at first because silence forces us to slow down. It removes the familiar distractions we use to avoid ourselves. Yet almost everyone has tasted a moment of silence that felt meaningful, even if they could not explain why. In those moments, something deeper seems to surface. Today, we explore that experience. This is the spiritual meaning of silence. Silence is often misunderstood as the absence of sound, a quiet room, or a lack of conversation. Spiritually, silence is something far more intimate and alive. It is a state of awareness rather than an external condition. You can be surrounded by noise and still experience silence within. This silence begins when attention shifts away from constant thinking. It is the moment you notice that you are aware, not just thinking. That awareness is the doorway. Silence is not something you create, it is something you notice. Many spiritual traditions describe silence as inner stillness rather than external quiet. It is the calm beneath the surface of the mind. Thoughts may still appear, but they lose their grip. You stop chasing them. In this stillness, you are no longer pulled by every emotion or reaction. Silence becomes a resting place. It feels stable, grounded, and deeply familiar. This is why silence often feels like coming home to yourself. There is a reason ancient teachings speak of a silence that speaks when the mental noise softens, something else becomes audible. It is not a voice you hear with your ears. It is more like insight, intuition, or a quiet knowing. This knowing does not argue or shout, it simply is. Mystics across cultures have pointed to this wordless wisdom as a source of truth. Silence becomes the language through which deeper understanding emerges. Some traditions describe this experience as a soundless sound, something felt rather than heard. It is subtle but powerful. When you touch it, you feel guided without being instructed. There is clarity without explanation. This is why silence often brings answers that words never could. It bypasses logic and speaks directly to the core of your being. Many people encounter this unknowingly during moments of awe, grief, or deep presence. In Christian mysticism, silence has long been considered the language of the divine. Silence is not viewed as emptiness, but as receptivity. It is the state in which the soul listens rather than speaks. In stillness, there is an openness to something greater than the self. Prayer, at its deepest level, becomes less about words and more about listening. Silence becomes communion rather than absence. Within Hindu and yogic traditions, intentional silence is practiced as a way of returning to the source. Silence is seen as a mirror, reflecting the true self once disturbances settle. When the mind becomes still, awareness recognizes itself. This recognition is not intellectual, it is experiential. Silence allows the layers of identity to fall away. What remains feels timeless and whole. In Islamic spirituality, silence has been used as a tool for self-control and reflection. Withdrawing into quiet contemplation is not an escape from life, but a way of understanding it more deeply. Silence creates space between impulse and action. In that space, wisdom grows, reflection deepens. The heart becomes more honest. Silence strengthens inner discipline without force. Mystical traditions across cultures point to silence as a doorway beyond thought. Words are seen as limited, silence allows one to move beyond concepts and touch existence directly. In this space, identity softens, separation fades. Silence becomes not something you do, but something you enter. It feels expansive rather than restrictive. It feels like truth without explanation. Modern life, however, is built on constant noise. Notifications, opinions, entertainment, and endless information streams fill every gap. Silence has become rare and even uncomfortable. Many people avoid it because it brings unresolved thoughts to the surface. Noise distracts us from ourselves. It keeps us busy but disconnected. Spiritually, this constant stimulation creates distance from inner awareness. Silence asks us to face the internal noise we carry. When external distractions fall away, the mind reveals its patterns. Fears, desires, regrets, and longings become louder at first. This can feel overwhelming, but this stage is not a failure. It is a revelation. Silence shows us what has been running our lives in the background. As the mind gradually settles, something shifts. The thoughts lose urgency. The emotions soften. A deeper sense of presence emerges. This is the paradox of silence. At first it feels loud, then it becomes spacious. The quieter you become, the more clearly you perceive. Not with your ears, but with your inner awareness. Silence begins to feel alive. One of the greatest gifts of silence is self-awareness. It reveals who you are beneath roles and reactions. You begin to notice the difference between authentic feelings and conditioned responses. Silence exposes the gap between who you think you are and who you actually experience yourself to be. This awareness is not judgmental, it is gentle and honest. It invites growth without pressure. Silence also heals emotional noise. Much of anxiety and stress comes from constant mental repetition. Worry feeds on attention. Silence interrupts this cycle. It creates space for emotions to move through rather than pile up. In stillness, the nervous system begins to relax. You start responding instead of reacting. Calm becomes natural rather than forced. Creativity often emerges from silence as well. When the mind stops consuming, it starts creating. Ideas arise from depth rather than imitation. Many artists, writers, and thinkers describe their best insights arriving in quiet moments. Silence allows the subconscious to surface. It connects intuition with expression. What emerges feels original and meaningful. For many, silence becomes a bridge to the divine or the sacred. In meditation, prayer, or quiet reflection, people often report a sense of presence. It may feel like peace, clarity, love, or connection. These experiences do not depend on belief systems. They arise from stillness itself. Silence amplifies introspection. It clears the lens through which reality is perceived. Real experiences of silence often arrive during significant life moments. Grief, for example, can suddenly quiet the world. In that quiet, people confront truths they had been avoiding. Silence becomes both painful and illuminating. It strips away distractions. It forces honesty, yet it can also bring unexpected comfort and clarity. Others describe their first intentional encounter with silence as overwhelming. Thoughts rush in, emotions surface. Then, unexpectedly, calm appears. It feels like passing through a storm into open space. This transition teaches patience. Silence does not arrive instantly. It unfolds as resistance softens. With time, stillness becomes familiar. Some people describe silence as meeting their inner compass. It is the voice that always knew direction but was drowned out. In silence, decisions feel clearer. Priorities realign. You stop seeking approval as intensely. The guidance you find feels personal and trustworthy. It does not shout, it simply points. You may have experienced silence speaking to you without realizing it, sitting alone and suddenly feeling clarity, waking up before the world becomes loud, walking quietly and feeling your heartbeat align with your steps. These moments are not empty, they are deeply communicative. Silence is present, whether you notice it or not. Entering silence does not require dramatic changes. It begins with intention. A few minutes of quiet each day can shift perception. No phone, no distractions, just presence. At first, the mind resists. Over time, it relaxes. Silence becomes something you look forward to rather than avoid. Mindful listening can also lead into silence. Noticing sounds without labeling them, hearing the space between noises, letting awareness expand rather than narrow. Eventually, attention rests in the background of experience itself. Silence is found not by eliminating sound, but by changing relationship to it. Meditation is another doorway. Sitting still and observing thought without engagement, not fighting the mind, not chasing calm, simply noticing thoughts. Rise and fall, awareness remains. As identification loosens, silence reveals itself naturally. It was always there, beneath the movement. Asking questions in silence can be powerful. Questions like, who am I? What do I fear? What brings peace? These questions are not answered immediately. They settle into stillness. Responses arise subtly, often later, through insight or feeling rather than words. Silence answers in its own time. Silence is not empty. It is full of what noise conceals. It holds clarity, presence, and depth. It reconnects you with yourself beyond roles and expectations. It reminds you that truth does not always arrive loudly. Often, it waits patiently. In silence, you hear the unspoken, see the unseen, and feel the unfelt. Silence is not absence, it is presence. It is not emptiness, it is depth. It is not weakness, it is power. When you feel the urge to fill every moment with noise, pause and listen. Your silence may already be speaking.